Too Long Didn't Read, brought to you by the Alan Turing Insitute, the National Institute of Data Science and AI. Hello, welcome to a Too Long Didn't Read special. I'm Jonah, a content producer here at the Alan Turing Institute.
And I'm Smera, a research assistant in data justice and global ethical futures.
Ahead of our second season of Too Long Didn't Read, we wanted to ease you in with this special episode, all about something close to our hearts, or at least something that has been consuming our work hours for the last few months. AI UK, the national showcase of data science and AI, brought to you by the Alan Turing Institute. On this episode, we're going to explore how drag shows can use AI to explore society's biases, how the UK could be the best place to further AI in healthcare, and how children are helping shape the AI of the future.
AI UK is our annual two-day event, and this year took place in March at the QE2 Centre in London. It was packed to the brim with interactive demonstrations, workshops, and talks from some of the leading minds in data science and AI. You can imagine the setting, Jonah. You're in Westminster, Houses of Parliament across the street, British think tanks lining the streets of Whitehall, the crisp spring weather, and most importantly, data science.
You make it sound very romantic, but we were kind of running around like headless chickens trying to get interviews and things like that. So AI UK is open to the public and the entire event was streamed online, free for all, but the audience does tend to be predominantly researchers, business and government people. So since there was so much good and relevant stuff, we decided to dedicate an entire episode to what we learned and who we met.
So to kick us off, we are joined by the one and only Lillian Hughes, the producer behind AI UK. Welcome, Lily. I imagine AI UK was a lot of work. Have you recovered?
Hi, Samira. Thanks so much for having me. I don't think anyone ever really recovers from AI UK, but I am doing much better now. I've rested, the sun's shining, back to my normal work hours. It's all good.
Well, congrats on your work, Lily. What is AI UK for our listeners and why is it relevant?
What AI UK is really an opportunity to bring all these different people from across the AI ecosystem in the UK together. So Turing works with academics, with researchers, with universities across the UK. We work with industries, with corporate partners. We work with government, policymakers, civil servants, and we work with the third sector as well. And very rarely do events bring all of those different people together to talk to each other and learn from each other. And that's what AI UK does.
Great, yeah, a meeting of minds.
A meeting of minds.
That's really cool, thank you.
Well, amongst the minds that were met, how is AI UK actually put together? Who decides which minds receive the showcase to talk, discuss, and demonstrate some of the work they're doing?
AI UK is a work of so many people. So there's a couple of different groups that I work with. The most important of which is the Program Advisory Group. So this is a group that volunteers their time from Turing. It's both business leaders at Turing and researchers at Turing from all different levels across the Institute. They come together. They think about what we should be platforming at AI UK, and then we go from there. What's possible, what isn't possible, how do we want to shape it, working together to build those ideas, develop them, and eventually showcase them at AI UK.
And a showcase it was.
Yes, it was a lot of people involved, and we were all some of them.
So you've seen at least 2 AI UKs through. So what's different about this year? What was your favorite bits? What are some main highlights that you came across, and what was different about AI UK 2024?
I don't know if I can ever choose sort of favorite sessions. They're all brilliant in their own way, but there were some really fun things that we did this year. I worked, as I said, with the Program Advisory Group to come up with some content that's a little bit different from what we'd done before. One of the things that I really enjoyed doing this year was the opening provocation. This was a project spearheaded by Drew Hemnett called The New Real. So we worked with Jake Elwes and collaborators to present a kind of positive utopia of AI, a bit different from the fear you sometimes hear about existential risk. We were really thinking about how humans and AI and society, all of this is going to come together, and there's an opportunity here for positive change. And I wanted to encourage everyone at the event to be curious about AI, to think about it in a way they might not have approached it before. So we did this as the opening provocation to really start off on that foot, celebrating AI, celebrating artists, and celebrating being curious.
That's brilliant. I think that was a phenomenal show. We did manage to catch up with me, the drag queen, and the project creator, Jake Elwes, backstage at AI UK. And we asked them why drag is a good vehicle to explore AI.
We're throwing rhinestones and wigs and big makeup on scary tech so that people can understand that there are amazing ways to use it as well as insidious ones.
Yeah, and drag is a great way of doing that because I guess AI systems have a lot of bias towards normativity. So for us, if we're injecting drag kings and drag queens and drag things, gender nonconformity into those systems, it's a wonderful way of exploring kind of biasing the AI towards otherness rather than normativity and breaking it down and seeing when it glitches and finding poetry and when it fails.
I think any technology, anything that impacts society in such a way has to represent and reflect all of society. You can't just have it modeled on the majority because the rest of us do exist. We're here. There may not be many of us, but we're here. And we're kind of more fabulous than you, so get us involved.
I guess for me,
it ain't a party if the queers aren't there, darling.
So me, the drag queen, and Jake, they also told us about how AI has influenced their own work. I think this is important because we see now why representation is important, especially in places where queerness is often on the margins, if it is even included at all.
I've been working with like AI machine learning for like coming up to 10 years now. So right in the early days, there was like AI in its infancy, the earliest generative adversarial networks after Ian Goodfellow's paper. I was in the basement of my art school, like programming these systems and hacking with them and kind of finding poetry in when they failed and broke down. And back then it was like, could only generate these tiny little images. And I guess my thinking around AI has changed a lot. It's like I used to very much be interested in these kind of questions of agency and consciousness and how much kind of agency can I give the computer as an art-making machine. But then as I kind of carried on researching in this field and realizing that questions about who's building these systems and who are they building them for became more the forefront, looking at bias, looking at far more pragmatic, what's in the data set, whose data set is it? Is it my data set? I think early on it was about appropriating large data sets and kind of making them fail and pointing out sometimes political things in that sense. But then it became far less about the sort of metaphysical questions around AI and more about the kind of pragmatic, how is this affecting people right now? And how can we, offer alternate visions of kind of AI features?
It's interesting, isn't it? It sort of shows how art is one of the first methods to take new technologies apart and like question the ethical side of how they're used. Maribeth Rohr, an artist and research engineer at Google DeepMind, also, fresh off the stage, told us about how AI relies so much on categorization and how queerness can encourage us to think beyond categories.
Queer representation is important in AI because it's one of those spaces that breaks down the binaries that we have and the fixed categories that we have. I think queerness pushes the boundaries of categorization into spaces that are more fluid. And in AI, we often are putting things into categories and boxes. Classification is still a very common application of AI, and queerness challenges that. And it's important to be critically interrogating our technical systems. And so queerness brings that perspective, and that's really important for building societally responsible and just also better performing AI systems.
Such a cool way to start AI UK, Lily. I imagine it challenged a lot of people's preconceptions, that opening provocation. We'll link Jake's work in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. So that was something new for this year's AI UK. Something else that was new for 2024 that wasn't there in 2023 were workshops. Am I right with that?
We actually had some workshops in 2023, but they were only an hour long. They were very limited in scope. This year, we really expanded it. We had 7 2-hour workshops throughout the 2 days, and they were really designed to be these very interactive, very intensive sessions where they were designed to solve problems, if that makes sense. I didn't want the workshop to be another panel. We had plenty of space for panels on the stages. So what is a workshop? What are you doing there? Are you building a community? Are you finding new projects? Are you solving a problem? Are you getting into data, into research? All these things, I was like, that's all on the table. And there were some hugely creative workshops at AI UK. I'm really, really proud of this part of the program, actually.
Yeah, I thought they were really cool. I was running around with my camera and I spent quite a lot of time in in the Lego play workshop where they were sort of building things to discuss cyber defense. And it was so good. There was so much interaction.
And I think one of the things about events like this, and actually it calls back to what Jake was doing as well, that, these events, these showcases, they're opportunities for us to experiment and play outside of the everyday. We can try things we haven't done before. We can meet people we haven't met before. And I think if you're all around a table, all playing with Lego or all brainstorming ideas with strangers, with new friends, if you're watching a deep fake drag queen, it's going to challenge what you think and what you encounter in your everyday. And it's so important to do that work. It's so important to experiment and to play, especially in a field like AI. So I think the workshops were really trying to encourage that.
During another workshop, I spoke to Rebecca Cosgriff, who is the Deputy Director for the Data for Research and Development Programme at NHS England. Rebecca was a lead on a workshop about unlocking healthcare data for safe, transparent and fair AI. And she told me what she was learning from having this interactive sort of session.
Yeah, I think one of the key learnings for me today was that there was actually really significant consensus across England, Scotland and Wales, which were represented on the panel, but also on some of the table discussions across industry, academia and the NHS on some of the key enablers of AI, including things like the proactive curation of data before it's provided out to researchers. It's really important that organisations like the Alan Turing Insitute have rapid access to granular, multimodal healthcare data generated by the NHS and other data sources to answer some of our really key imperative questions on how we improve care for patients, support the NHS and drive innovation.
Speaking about healthcare data, there was also another panel on improving disease detection. Chair of the board of the Turing and director of the Natural History Museum, Doug Gurr, was on this panel. And he told us why the UK is not only best placed, but probably the only place where such advances can happen.
So healthcare data is probably the most sensitive area. You've got to be able to bring patients with you. You've got to bring trust. And that's why you need a regulatory environment that can reassure that we're going to do this in an ethically sound, sensitive, safe way, but at the same time, a way that doesn't constrain that innovation. And the UK is, I would say probably, but actually I'm going to go for certainly, the best place in the world to do this, because only really in the UK do you have those amazing data sets. So with the opportunity to bring together the data science talent, the clinical talent, get the government involved, and actually bring everybody around the table so that for the first place in the world, we can truly reap the benefits of what AI can do for healthcare.
The element of trust raised by Doug is very crucial with the technology we are confronting. Almost daily, we see reports on AI for good, especially in healthcare, but we also see how AI has the capacity to disrupt labor markets, influence the economy, giving a lot of people reasons to be skeptical. Hence, I think that trust factor should be at the center of developing an inclusive and equitable path forward, particularly in using AI for healthcare.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was exploring the demonstration area, I caught up with a team who are developing digital twins of hearts. So you can have a digital copy of your own heart with all the accurate medical data, and then they can run simulations of, say, different drugs or stresses on your heart and see how it would respond. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
I think my own heart may be too broken for a digital twin.
Smera.
Anyway, this is phenomenal work. It was really exciting to see them 3D printing these hearts right in front of us on the expo floor. But beyond just the excitement of seeing a 3D printed heart, the future of this work could revolutionize healthcare for a very particular group. Can you guess which one, Jonah?
Is it a vulnerable group?
It is a vulnerable group. Do you want to get specific?
Is it children?
Yes, it is. Children. So we can use digital twins to advance children's healthcare without actually involving real human children. Children have very different bodies that are constantly changing, and we cannot merely copy-paste adult healthcare responses to that of a child. Moreover, I think the ethics of trialing and testing these healthcare responses on a vulnerable group like children is at the forefront of the concerns that are faced by regulators and governments. Of course, at the heart of all of this is data. And the Turing has been working very closely with children to better understand how to safely use that data. From the What Can Children Teach Us About AI session, we grabbed Turing Fellow Very Aitken and Steph Wright from the Scottish AI Alliance to talk about their project, which puts children's voices at centre stage.
Well, in Scotland's AI strategy, we had a commitment to adopt the UN's policy guidance on AI in children. And we wanted to explore how we can engage with children to get their input into our shared AI futures. It just so happened at that time, Vari and her team at Alan Turing Insitute were also interested in that. And I thought, what better organizations to bring together than the academic excellence of ATI with the children's rights-based approach of the Children's Parliament.
When we think about child-centered approaches to AI, it's important that we're not just thinking about safeguarding children from the risks. Of course, that's one really important dimension of it. But often there can be kind of overly paternalistic approaches, which are all about identifying from an adult's perspective what the risks are and safeguarding or protecting children from those risks or perceived risks of AI. But if we don't actually speak to children and understand from children's perspectives what their experiences are, what their interests are, what their concerns are, we might miss some really important aspects of this. And it's also important that this isn't just about identifying risks or safeguarding children from risks. It's also about finding ways that we can maximize the value and maximize the benefits of technology and innovation for children. When we speak to children about AI, the big themes that come out, the kind of central areas that they really want to focus on discussing quite consistently around themes of fairness and particularly how these technologies might work differently for different children. And I think the children that we've spoken to certainly seem to really kind of intuitively gravitate towards the concept of fairness. It wasn't something that we introduced. It wasn't something that we planned to have as a central theme of the engagement, but it was really what the children wanted to talk about. And they grasped very quickly that AI might have different outcomes for different groups of children, and that they were really wanting to understand more about how we could develop these systems to make them fairer, to make sure that they had equitable benefits for different groups of children. That's part of the value of having children in these conversations, because well, as an adult, we might fairness is maybe a kind of a concept, an abstract thing, and something that we know is important, but adults often make kind of justifications, or, well, that might not be fair, but it's because of this, 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 and this, whereas children will say, that's not fair, that's not okay. We need to do something about it, we need to make that fair. And actually, that's sort of the value of bringing that children's perspective into these discussions.
Yeah, I love it when the plan comes together. So obviously the collaboration kicked off. We're now approaching the end of phase 2. The first year was led by the Turing Insitute to explore children's rights and AI. The second year, which we've just come to end, is about exploring how to dig deeper into operationalizing some of the findings in phase 1 of the project, especially around, safety, AI in education, and bias, which were all these concerns that children expressed they were particularly interested in exploring. So phase 2 was about partnering up with actual organizations with actual projects or policies they were developing that the children can meaningfully influence.
That's really interesting. Maybe this will begin to fix the trend of future generations having to fix past generations' mistakes. Talking of futures, I was at AI UK last year and heard a lot of predictions for the year ahead, and a lot of them were about how generative AI, like ChatGPT, was going to go stratospheric and how we will start to encounter more misuse of those tools. This year, I caught up with Michael Wooldridge, who chaired a session all about large language models, and asked for his thoughts.
So I think there's 2 things I think were really interesting to keep an eye on in terms of risks. So the first is about misinformation and disinformation, particularly in elections. And as I'm talking now, within the next year, we're going to have more than 1 billion people worldwide going into elections. We've got elections in the UK, we've got elections in the US, elections in India, the world's biggest democracy. And the fear that was just beginning to be voiced a year ago was that AI was going to be used to generate disinformation on an industrial scale. Now, the worrying thing is we are beginning to see the signs of that happening. We're beginning to see fake news stories. And actually, interestingly, we're beginning to see news stories where people are claiming that it's AI generated, even though it's actually original, which is not something that we anticipated. So I'm looking at that nervously. The government's announced initiatives to try to deal with that. Let's hope that they get it right. And I think the Turing will be front and center in those discussions about how to get that right. The other thing is the age-old question of AI and employment. And again, a year ago, we were looking and contemplating whether large language models were going to lead to unemployment on a large scale, for example. we're just beginning to see the first signs in some sectors of the impact of large language models. So we're beginning to get, for the first time, some understanding of how this technology is going to affect the workplace. And I think this is going to be a crucial year. At the end of this year, I think there's a real chance that we will have seen some really significant signs of how AI in general, but large language models in particular, are affecting the workplace. So I think that is something that we should really keep an eye on over the next year.
Lily, are there any sessions that we haven't touched on that you want to cover? I'm probably drawn to some of the big headlines, some of the more accessible sessions, but I'm very aware that there's loads of stuff that's been talked about that will be interesting to lots of different audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were about 50 sessions all in all at AI UK. So there are so many I wish I could talk about, and they really do range in topic. We had sessions on AGI and LLMs. There were sessions on productivity that it might not seem sexy, but that's the stuff that's going to impact my life. That's going to make it easier for me to fill out forms, for me to interact with the state. That's going to make my life better as a citizen. And I think that stuff's really important and really interesting. It's really important to have these conversations that we might not be having in other spaces, or we are having in siloed conversations where just experts are talking to each other. But at AI UK, like I said, everyone's there. Policymakers, experts from across different fields, researchers, students, professors, industry leaders. So you're getting all sorts of people together to talk about things that they might not have previously talked about or heard about. Defense and security, for example. I think it's really important to platform those issues at AI UK and have a discussion outside of the defense and security ecosystem. Obviously, the people who are interested in it, they're welcome to come. They learn and they can contribute to that conversation. But people who might not be familiar with that field, it's great for them to see that content as well, I think.
No, I fully agree, Lily. I think with the recent developments, we can see how AI and tech is being positioned as a very important tool in a nation's defense arsenal. Throughout history, we've seen how advances in tech have been driven by investments in research and development by departments of defense. For instance, Jonah, I remember in our episode on chip wars, we saw how defense investment was critical to improving the microchip architecture and capacity.
I do, yes. That was a good one. Chip Wars, you can check it out on Series 1. So there was a session at AI UK called The Secret Session, which was a chat between Tim Watson from the Alan Turing Insitute and Stephen Meers, who works for the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, DSTL, the research arm of the Ministry of Defence. We spoke to him about the impact AI is having on defence and security.
So I think defence and AI is obviously a topic that a lot of people feel concerned about. But for me, as a scientist working in the defence area, I really see this as a transformational technology that can really support our armed forces in the difficult role that they undertake. So everything from things like command and control, where they have to make difficult decisions. How can we use AI to help get them the best information, to help them make the best possible decision in the different environments that they're in? Intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance. How can we use AI to help make sense of massive amounts of data and help them understand what's going on around them? And then perhaps closer to home, how might we be able to use AI to counter disinformation and misinformation and help ensure that people can really understand the authenticity and provenance of the information that they're seeing on the internet.
Lily, thank you so much for joining us for this Too Long Didn't Read special. And congratulations to you and all your colleagues, and that also obviously includes us. Congratulations to everybody involved in AI UK.
Thank you so much, Jonah. It's been great to be here, and I'm so glad we can rewatch it on YouTube as well.
Yes, all the sessions, cut downs, lots of exciting content will be on our YouTube, but we'll probably talk about that when it actually appears there. Thanks, Smera. Nice to see you again after all this time.
And hopefully I'll see you in a month for a brand new season.
Yep. And thank you, of course, to Jessie, who's in the background, furiously scribbling away notes, that is, not just drawing a picture. And you for listening. See you soon for Series 2. Toodaloo!